The Australian Financial Review.
This concept of connecting the head and the heart. All companies really have lofty goals. You are going to be asked to put a lot into what you do. But it's the heart piece. You have to get excited about what you do. You have to get excited about what your company stands for.
Hi, I'm Sally Patton, editor of Boss from the Australian Financial Review, and welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success and failure and everything in between, and along the way we're hoping to get some really great advice from our leaders. Now, my guest today is Simon Banks, the Managing Director of PayPal in Australia. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Sally. Thank you for having me.
Now, Simon, as I said, you're the Managing Director of PayPal in Australia. PayPal is a global online payments provider. In Australia, almost half the adult population uses PayPal, with over 9.5 million active PayPal accounts in the local market. You have a lot of access to online shopping data, and my fun fact is that 15% of Australians admit to shopping online daily. Mm-hmm. And paying bills is the most common category for online spend, followed by tickets and clothing and accessories. So how often do you shop online, and what do you buy mostly?
I shop online almost every day. I somehow buy a lot of clothing.
Right.
Sounds crazy, but I buy a lot of skincare. I think it's an age thing. I actually catch Uber a lot, and I use PayPal to pay for Uber. I'm a bit of a retail addict. But a lot of it is just everyday spend, lifestyle things like bill payment, catching Uber, those sorts of things.
But great to hear. You're a real shopper, it sounds.
I am a real shopper, definitely.
Simon, we've only got 15 minutes. I'm going to start the clock right now. My first question is, tell me about your morning routine. What time do you get up and what do you do first?
So my morning routine, I'm up normally before 6. I would typically like to be in the office by 7:30. That's a time when you can get a lot done. Between 6 and 7:30, sometimes I will go to the gym or exercise, but it's not like I'm religiously, attached to it. I did make a pledge with myself when I hit a milestone birthday a few years ago that I would try and do a long run on a weekend. So on a weekend, I, would do a minimum 10-kilometre run. But through the week, probably the gym 2 or 3 times.
Right, okay. Can you tell me about a promotion you were given, a project that you worked on, or something that happened that totally changed the direction in which you were going?
My probably most pivotal moment would have been very early in my career. So talking of age, I graduated from university in the early 90s. Now, we had this R word in Australia then, the word recession. Firstly, it took a huge amount of time for me as a graduate to find work.
And what had you studied?
I studied a Bachelor of Economics with a finance and accounting major, and I had real trouble finding work. And then I finally landed a role, and, it was with a large American, technology company. They don't exist anymore,
okay.
But its company was called Digital. 4 months or 5 months into that, there was a lot of restructuring in that business, and many 30-40% of the staff, ended up being restructured in the business. And the graduates didn't go because we probably were cheap. But I learned very early about not taking your work for granted. I felt tremendously lucky to be working for the company still. And it built this mindset that I've carried with me ever since of, have I delivered? Being accountable for outcomes. And it sort of carried with me through my career. I think the labour market's way different now. The company's going to give me experience. The company's going to give me training. There's a lot I can take from the company as a person that works there, but companies change and never take anything for granted, and it's sort of something that I've really carried with me through most of my career.
How did you feel at the time when you just couldn't get the job?
It's something that really makes you question, did I study the wrong degree? You think about things that all uni students probably go through, like, man, I should have got more HDs, should have studied a bit harder. But interestingly enough, a lot of people were going through the same. It was a pretty common thing in Sydney at the time and in Australia. I'm not sure about the rest of the world. Working for a computer company was very different to, hey, are you going to get a job as a chartered accountant and get trained as a CPA? That's not really probably the trajectory that my study had put me on. But it's opened this incredible world for me that is also massively pivotal in my background and where I am today.
So my next question is about advice. What is the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
Probably the best I've had is this concept of connecting the head and the heart. All companies really have lofty goals. You are going to be asked to put a lot into what you do. That's the way the world is. And so the head factors are all those things around, am I qualified? Have I got the skills? Can I learn how to do it? But it's the heart piece. You have to get excited about what you do. You have to get excited about what your company stands for. And if you can't get the heart piece, the head piece is only one part of it. And, I'm tremendously fortunate that through my career I've worked for businesses that have a meaningful impact on the planet. And I'm tremendously fortunate at PayPal. This is a company that has enabled businesses. It's enabled consumers all over the world. And so I get excited about what we do. I like to think it rubs off on the people that I work with. But if you don't have it, it's one of these missing things. You've got to be really passionate about what your company does, what it stands for, and its impact on the planet, or its impact in Australia, or its impact in your suburb. But the head and the heart connectivity drives a lot of your willingness and want and desire to do what you do every day and do it with passion and enthusiasm.
That's true. And if you don't make the right call, and let's face it, we all make mistakes, do you dwell on that, or have you learnt not to dwell on that and just to move on? There's
a lot of people that will cheer success. Success has many fathers in any business. I think being really accountable for actually, I made that call, and you know what, it was probably the wrong call. And certainly the leaders I've worked for that have that, that honesty and the sincerity, I think is a really important part of being an authentic leader. There's times where you do think that was probably the wrong decision. And I think you also need, you need to be brave enough to also admit that publicly.
And I guess the great thing about that is you're also setting a precedent for people around you that, that the culture of this business is you make a wrong call, you own it, move on.
Yeah, and we very much have that sort of open culture, which is, we compete fiercely, we have lofty goals, but we also are very open and transparent about, how things are really going. And that's a really important part of, the way a business works.
Own your mistakes.
Own your mistakes. Yeah, I think it's a really important point.
On that note, Simon, we are going to take a short break.
Okay.
Don't go away. We're going to come right back and open the lovely chatterbox. See you in a bit. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Simon Banks, the Managing Director of PayPal in Australia. Now, Simon, this is our section called the Chatterbox. Inside our lovely brown box, we have about 15 questions. Please pull them out one by one and we'll get going with some more Q&A.
So I do this?
Yeah, you do that. Here we go. When was the last time you gave up something or had to quit something because it wasn't working? And perhaps then what did you learn from it?
I actually would think back to a couple of years I spent at a startup fintech, and we had funding. I was based in Australia, and my role was to grow that business in Asia Pacific. And so we had broad expansion plans.
As fintechs do.
As fintechs do. And so we got the business up and off the ground in Australia, tick. And then it was getting into this, how do you get a fintech licensed in Asia? How do you start to, hire staff? All of these things cost money. And obviously fintechs, burn money until they are profitable. But I think it's a really good example where we put a person on the ground. We engage law firms around getting the appropriate licenses that you need to operate as a fintech. And then it became just very clear that the road ahead, the time to actually receive revenue, all of those sorts of things, this was going to be a journey that even though we thought we were set up for it, was just going to be way too long. And so it's like, you know what? We just have to go, let's keep this business focused very much in Australia. Let's take the expansion plans and let's park them. We didn't kill them all together. We parked them, knowing really how big a hill you can climb is something that is quite gravitational.
If you were starting up a fintech again, how would you treat offshore expansion?
I think I would qualify much harder what was involved in doing it. I mean, the speed at which fintechs move is is pretty astounding.
It's phenomenal.
Right? Like we need to go back to that point, head and heart, making decisions quickly. I think the benefit of hindsight gives you that ability to look for what you didn't look for last time. Could we have planned better? Yes. Knowing the stones you had to unturn or overturn first. Sometimes knowing what's going to resonate in the market doesn't show up from a research report. It's like going and talking to customers in that market, going and talking to business partners or prospective business partners. You need to actually go and do some form of on the ground of what it's going to take, and that I would definitely advocate that before, taking a very bold expansion strategy as a small business.
How did you cope with that sense of failure? Did you just think it's a business decision and get on with it? Or did you somehow take that to heart and think, wow, we really did make a mistake there?
Yeah, I mean, go back to where we started. When you put your head and your heart into it, you don't leave a great company to join a startup lightly. You do it because you have, great ambition. You want to put your soul into something. You will work the hours. Partly you want to prove something as well. So realizing that the grand vision, isn't going to come off is something that takes a little time to adjust to. But then there's always other avenues, fintechs that have great products, and as was the case in my scenario, get acquired by other companies that are looking for that piece in their arsenal. Call it a pivot, because that's the word we use these days. At the time, though, it was, oh my God, all of these huge growth plans are going to potentially not come to fruition, certainly not in the time frame with the investment profile.
Right, okay. That's great. Have another fish in the box. Let's go. Thank you. How do you get over a bad day?
I'm also very fortunate that on the weekends I live on a small rural property in the Hunter. So think horses and a few steers. And it's that whole, the mental health aspect of it, which is not unlike exercising, where you get these endorphins from going for a run or going to the gym. But I also find, like, the funny thing about a farm is there's just so much work to be done. But the work is so different. You can spend a whole day slashing a paddock with a tractor, 4 hours, 6 hours.
Yep.
The interesting thing is when you're done, you can look at what you did and you see this paddock or this field that's all smooth and you go, wow, I did that. I'm assuming builders and painters get this too, right? Or fixing a fence that I'm not that good at. There's something about manual work that is a real different balance to working in the corporate environment, where sometimes the decisions you make or things you do take weeks, months, years, to actually come to fruition, where you get this incredible sense of gratification. You also get this incredible sense of, the physical aspect of it too is actually quite balancing, I think, for the mind. I'm a big believer in that. I'm not great at any of these things. In fact, part of it's the learning how to fix a barbed wire fence. It's not something that you just do if you haven't done it all your life.
Sure.
Right? So, but yeah, I actually think the physical aspect of a lot of this is a really nice balance for the work environment.
Okay, great. I love that. Have another fish in the box.
Okay.
Drum roll, drum roll. What's the hardest thing about leadership?
There's, I think, a couple of things that make good leaders. You need a healthy ego and you need a healthy empathy. Knowing what makes people tick, knowing what gets the best out of people. Of course, being a leader isn't all fun times. Sometimes there's very difficult decisions that need to get made. Sometimes even things like giving feedback when things haven't gone well. The old saying, feedback is a gift, but you also want to get your message across in a way that doesn't make people feel bad, that gets the best out of them next time.
And is there a secret to doing that?
You need to be really open and honest and sincere. At the end of the day, everybody's goals are your goals too. If you ground yourself in some of those concepts, but I think having the right level of empathy, often it's a case of, is this a willingness thing? Is it an ability thing? Is it, sometimes people have bad days as well, right? So I think you need to have a very strong level of empathy around that process.
And would you practice something in your head before you're going to deliver the message?
Yes. I would normally think about it actually at the start of the day.
Mm.
Like go back to between that 6 and 7 time. I find space at that time of the day to think about things while I'm having coffee or, sometimes going to the gym. So I would typically think about that early in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. You've made it. That is the end of our Chatterbox section, Simon. Well done. But there's one more question,
Okay.
which we ask every guest, and that is, if for some reason you weren't the managing director of PayPal in Australia, what do you think you would be doing?
If I had a lot more time to myself, I'm in a band.
Mhm.
Started as a parent school band, but we got very good, and there are some proper professional musicians in the band. I would certainly get way better at music. I would probably manage the band properly. I would book us a gig every month. And
What's your role in the band?
I sing. I would probably spend a lot more time getting good at music, and I would become like the band manager and book lots of gigs.
That is fantastic. And what sort of music is your band?
Covers, rock and roll. But interesting rock and roll, soul. We've got horns and, we do soul music, we do pub rock, we do Australian classics. We do all the classics, but no Stairway to Heaven.
Right, okay. Do you think you would tour around Australia? Do you think you would try and go wider? Where do you think you would book these gigs?
Let's start with Australia, because everybody else has a job too, right? There's some professional musicians in the band. There are people that are, doctors and lawyers and other things in the band as well. So they would have to be available too. But it's this great aspiration is to do way more with it.
How good a break is being in a band from work? Is that something else that just allows you to shut off completely?
Totally. You get completely immersed in it. It's not like playing some music with friends. It's the band has to come together. You have to be tight. The audience wants to see a show. They don't want to see people practicing up the front, right? It's tremendous with great people that are friends rehearsing, but it's this incredible adrenaline rush of performing, at a pub or at a party or something like that, or a couple of corporate events we've done.
Oh, wow.
It's great fun.
On that note, Simon, our 15 minutes is up. Simon, I really love the fact that you talk about being accountable at work and you have to own your own mistakes and just how important it is to do that. I love the way you think about balancing your heart and your head. You've got to use both in order to be a success at work. I really love hearing about the way that manual work really helps you to deal with busy weeks and perhaps a bad day. And also the fact that you are very comfortable on stage and have this great band, and perhaps one day you'll have lots more gigs around Australia. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure spending 15 minutes with the boss.
Sally, on behalf of PayPal and myself, thank you for having us.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Mandy Coulin. Head of audio is Alex Gow, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.